it can be really frustrating and annoying and confusing to be on the receiving end of the narcissist silent treatment. Because most likely you would have been interacting with a narcissist on a regular basis for quite a while, potentially months or years. And all of a sudden they just cut communications and don't really give you any explanation of why they're doing that. In some cases, they just go silent for a few hours, or it could be days or even weeks, sometimes even more. And to say the least, it's rude and not very nice. And on the other end of the spectrum, it can be considered outright emotionally abusive. But why do they do that? Of course, it leaves the victim confused, but why do they do that? There are three main reasons why narcissists give you the silent treatment. One reason is they might simply be punishing you because maybe you upset them. And narcissists, they have fragile egos, right? So maybe you've just been a bit too happy lately, or maybe you challenged them on something, you challenged their authority, because narcissists can be very possessive and grandiose and demeaning, and they don't like when people question them. So sometimes the silent treatment is just a way of punishing you. So next time you'll be more careful when it comes to questioning them, disagreeing with them, or simply just being too happy. But it's not always to punish you. Sometimes narcissists give you the silent treatment to test you. They want to test your loyalty towards them. They want to test your dependency on them. Because if you need them, if you're strongly emotionally bonded to them, you probably don't really understand who they are and what they're about. The silent treatment will just drive you off the walls, thinking, what the hell just happened? Have I done something wrong? Do they still care about me? And most likely it will cause you to chase them, sending a barrage of messages, just trying to get an explanation back. And of course, if you respond in that way, desperate, then it shows that indeed you are very dependent on them. You are very loyal towards them, as the narcissist would see. And that's what they would expect. And the third reason is simply maybe narcissists are investing in a new person. Because narcissists, when they're in a relationship for a while, they quickly get bored of the person. And when they get bored of the person, they don't really see any value in that person anymore. Because most of us, when we build connections with people, and which of course includes romantic settings, even when the novelty wears off, you still see that person as a human being. And over time, you would have built a connection towards them. You care about the person, you wish them well, and you compliment each other. So maybe at first you would have had more of this infatuation mixed with love, and then later it becomes more companionship mixed with love, and you still want the person around if it's a healthy relationship for you. But narcissists, once they get used to a person and the novelty wears off, they kind of look at that person, they're thinking, yeah, you're pretty boring, I can do better, but any time and space so I can invest in this new person who's going to be your replacement. So narcissists sometimes can take many days, but most likely a couple of weeks, where they're not really going to be much in contact, if at all, where they're really trying to invest in this new person to secure this new person as a replacement. Because maybe the narcissist has been subtly testing the waters with a new person for some time, and then they've come to the realization that the new person is actually a very promising supply source, and they see you as redundant, stale, ready to go, ready to be discarded. So they're just kind of placing the final touches on this new replacement supply to make sure that they can secure the person to meet their needs going forwards. And that narcissists, when they're trying to secure a new supply like that, they need to be all focused on that person. They can't really afford distractions, and hence they have to keep you at bay. And that's where narcissists sometimes might say they're going to visit a family member. That might be the excuse later, or the excuse before they go, but oftentimes there's no explanation. and then they just kind of radio silence. Maybe they've pretending they have family issues in another country, state, city, whatever. So they can't call or message you for 3 or 4 weeks. It's the narcissist bullshit. But they really need to focus strongly on this new person so they can really increase the chances of securing that person as a new supply. And it's once they've secured that new person as a new supply, which would have involved them spending a lot of time with the person, a lot of love bombing, a lot of investment, potentially taking the person out on lots of dates, lots of dinners, really getting the new person invested in the narcissist. And then oftentimes they'll reach that point where they can then afford to spend a few days away from the new person because the new person is now dependent on the narcissist. And then the narcissist might come back. But they're very, at that point, they're very diffident, very indifferent towards you because basically they know that they're priming you up for the ultimate discard because they don't need you anymore. But anyway, those are the three main reasons why narcissists have that, that they give you that silent treatment. And whatever the reason is, if you've realized you're dealing with a narcissist, and of course, if you're watching these videos, you might have an inkling that you are, it's just never chase them when they give you the silent treatment. If you're on a silent treatment, you have to know they're either emotionally abusing you, punishing you, or getting ready to discard you. Look, neither of those three options look good to you. They're either abusing you, punishing you, or about to discard you. Why would you invest in a person who's putting you on the receiving end of either of those? The best you can do is to keep on educating yourself about what you're dealing with. Be ready to work your way out, because if you just don't respond to them, you ignore them, but you're not really giving them an explanation of where you're at in your thinking either. Of course, narcissists will still get curious about where you're at, because whether they're punishing you, just emotionally abusing you, testing you, or ready to discard you, they always want to know where you're at. And maybe if they're about to discard you, you might think, okay, in that scenario, they're not really interested. And that might be right. They might not care so much about you anymore in that case. In the other scenarios, of course, if they're punishing you or testing you and you kind of pass the test in a sense, where you don't really show that you need them, that you really don't chase them, of course they get really concerned because they still do need you. They want to make sure that you are secured, which sometimes it means their silent treatment backfires on them. And you can see them getting desperate, them getting a bit paranoid, like they've overstepped. But then if they're ready to discard you for somebody else, even if they might be slightly unnerved by the fact that you're not chasing them, they'll probably still to continue investing in the new person. But once that novelty wears off after a few weeks or whatever, if you've just accepted them going away, accepted without much of a fuss, not trying to seek closure, that's an injury to them that sits in their kind of mental bank. And most likely at some point, they feel like the record isn't really set in a satisfying way, because they always want to make sure that you're at a disadvantaged position, emotionally, if nothing else. So even if they're off with somebody else, and you're okay with it, most likely they're going to think, once they are no longer investing in the new person so much, once they are not spending so much time with the new person, thoughts of you are going to creep back up in their mind, and they'll probably be back. Anyway, what's the bottom line here? If you're receiving the silent treatment, the best thing you can do in any of the scenarios is just ignore them. Don't chase them. Don't look for an explanation. Don't show any desperation. Take it as a sign to move on and know you're dealing with an emotional abuser. And most likely at some point they'll be back. And most likely they'll be back pretty soon. almost pretending nothing's happened, because narcissists love to emotionally abuse you and then pretend like nothing's happened because it makes you look unhinged. And they're like, you look like you've seen a ghost. What's wrong with you? I want to help you. And a lot of people fall for it, and they look at the narcissist as a super stable, collected, composed person, while the victim is just losing it, not knowing they're being emotionally abused. Thanks for watching.